Welcome back to The Independence. As Iraq teeters on the brink of disintegration, the U.S.-backed Shiite government is getting some strategery from Iran, a little help from a friend, I guess. And we're trying to figure out who is more dangerous to align ourselves with and who's going to clean up the big mess. Let's talk to Ambassador John Bolton, former ambassador to the UN for the United States of America. Welcome back, Ambassador.
Glad to be with you.
So you've written quite a lot about the most recent aspects of the conflict, and you think playing the blame game is stupid. I think it's really smart because I think we have to figure out how we got here so we don't do it again. Do you disagree with that?
Well, the issue is what we do right now. And you can go back and re-examine everything we've done beforehand. It doesn't fundamentally change the question. And I think a lot of the debate trying to blame Obama or blame Bush really gets in the way of analyzing where the main threat is today. And I think that's obviously the critical point, because this is a very, very dangerous region, and our policy for the past 5.5 years, if not longer, has failed to take account of the principal danger, which is Iran.
And you think that President Bush the younger had no part in destabilizing Iraq and getting it to the point it is now?
I think President Bush did exactly the right thing in overthrowing Saddam Hussein, and it's kind of stunning to me to see you libertarians defending that dictatorship.
Is that what happened?
No one's defending the dictatorship.
All right. Now, gloves are coming off, Ambassador.
No one's defending the dictatorship at all. The question.
Sure you are.
No, absolutely
not.
George
George Orwell once said of the accusers
that line.
In World War II, he said they were objectively pro-fascist.
Yeah, you should read Orwell beyond the diaries that he wrote in World War II and read how
heaven forbid. His diaries don't reflect what he really believed.
He rejected that line. If you're going to use that Orwell, know your Orwell. He repudiated that line precisely because he knew that it didn't allow for proper understanding of the people that he was talking to.
You give me the citation where he repudiated the quote I just made.
If you're talking about getting distracted by questions, let's not get distracted here while we're having this discussion, because there are some very critical questions that have to be answered.
Right.
I will let you start. Why don't you raise the most critical one?
Explain to me why you believe Saddam Hussein should still be in power in Iraq today.
I don't. He's dead. So let's move on.
Well, no. I think part of
let's move on. Okay.
How about this, Mr. Bolton?
Why is he dead?
How about this, Mr. Bolton? Here's an issue that I think we need to reconcile ourselves to.
You can't answer the question.
Actually,
That's why you want to address
Mr. Bolton, we asked you to come here. We're going to have a conversation. Matt is sort of giving you an answer. If you'll allow me, I'd like to transition to something slightly different based on what you just said.
Go ahead.
Excellent. You talked about us not looking backwards, not paying attention to what happened before because we're faced with a number of choices now. It seems to me that the kind of decision that we might make may in fact be influenced by the fact that we've made certain decisions in the past, and it hasn't worked out particularly well. There were in fact people in the administration who told us this would be a cakewalk, that we would be greeted as liberators, who don't seem to understand the region nearly as well as they pretended that they did before the conflict began. And after the conflict has gone on for more than a decade, hundreds of thousands of lives expended at this point, sir.
That is ridiculous. That is utterly ridiculous.
Okay, fine.
What's your source on the hundreds of thousands of lives?
800,000
this
plus
is
lives.
a kind of big lie. No, this is a big lie.
Actually, it's not a big lie. Let's say it's a mistake.
You don't have a source for it. Then tell me your source.
Sir, again, the source.
Tell me your source.
Okay, no, I'm going to stop you both right now. Hold on 1 second. Why don't you give me your source? Why don't you give me your number? If you're so accurate with your math, hold on a second. If you're so accurate with your math, why don't you give me a number? And why don't you justify that? So you're telling me a completely destabilized Iraq now is better than where it was in 2002?
I'm not responsible for Iraq today. That's because of what Barack Obama did in withdrawing American troops.
The withdrawal took place
fundamentally the case. I think that's unquestionably
on the
truth.
basis of the timetable that the Bush administration set up before they left. The Iraqi regime that we protected, we the United States government, I'm being very inclusive there because I've been against this, that we protected, we're supposed to have time to stand up troops, we're supposed to have time to reconcile themselves to these various factions. They did not do that. They failed at it miserably, and they asked us to leave. It seems ridiculous to me to try and place all of the blame on this for this, especially from someone who just said we shouldn't be pointing fingers.
If you people would ever ask a sensible question instead of simply relying on ideological nostrums, I would explain to you that I think that nation building in Iraq was never going to work and was not the objective. All that said, it was the right thing to overthrow Saddam Hussein, and knowing what we know today, I would do it again.
Okay, oh, really? Okay, but by the way, Donald Rumsfeld has gone on the record and said you wouldn't assassinate Saddam Hussein. Instead, you would spend thousands and thousands of lives and billions of dollars. That seems like an absurd justification.
Look, the overthrow of Saddam Hussein was accomplished in an extraordinarily short period of time and with very few American casualties. There are two issues here. Was it right to overthrow Saddam Hussein? And then second, what happened after that? And you're conflating the two, and that's a huge mistake.
I just don't see how you separate the overthrow from what happens afterwards, because of course there's a post-war.
Well, that's perfectly obvious how you separate it, because there were alternative courses that you could have taken. For example, instead of setting up a coalition provisional authority, we could have simply turned the government of Iraq back over to Iraqis from the diaspora for the opposition within Iraq, and kept our military there essentially to hold the ring, but put political responsibility back in the hands of Iraqis. That's what I thought we were going to do.
In that case, the only objection would have been taking out Saddam Hussein. That's the only objective in a scenario like that.
The objective was to remove a threat to international peace and security that had used chemical weapons against its own people, had used chemical weapons against Iran during the 1980s, and that had kept together, even after UN inspections, 1,000 nuclear scientists and technicians whom Saddam referred to as his nuclear mujahideen, who had the intellectual capital to rebuild a nuclear weapons program. And if you think Iran with nuclear weapons is bad, think about what it would have been like to have two nuclear powers like that in the Middle East.
Sweet. Then by that logic, we should be invading Iran and North Korea any day now.
No, but I think the fact that North Korea has nuclear weapons is a catastrophic defeat for the United States over the years. It risks Japan, South Korea, and others. And I think when Iran gets nuclear weapons, you'll see the danger of that, too.
All right, Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we'll talk with one head shrinker who thinks we should slap government warnings on Facebook. How do we feel about that? Need to ask.